Hello everyone and welcome back to ProRPA.com. Hope you guys are good on the front of input methods and all the different methodologies that we have discussed last week. Last week was a bit special for me because, other than the blog post and the way I get to interact with you guys, of course, I also, got my first book published on Amazon. It's called CRISPR Learning for UiPath. I highly recommend you guys to check it out because it's very concise and to the point, which is going to give a very comprehensive knowledge of what RPA is and all the different capabilities that UiPath gives you, along with all the examples that we have used so far and we're going to use in our forthcoming blogs and articles as well. Awesome. So for this week, we are gonna talk about output methods. I have discussed this in theoretical explanation in my blog at prorpa.com, and we have full text native or OCR methods to extract data which is visible to a screen from a target application, and we need to get it to our workflow, either for further computation or for simply displaying it. It could be of any use. So, I have a MyCRM sample application open here and I'm gonna get data from it, right? It's got like three different tabs: people, company, other, and also it's got like fields within itself, categorized as name, address, phone, email. So, what we're gonna do is very simple, and most of the task is automatically done by the UiPath. However, I have mentioned this in the blog post as well that you have to know different capabilities and sometimes you gotta make the change, but most of the times you can just go ahead with what UiPath is recommending, right? And again, depends on um, the business problem that you're solving. Okay, so what we have is a screen scraping wizard here to scrape the data from the UI elements of an application. So you can see either I can select the whole application to get the data, or I can get to just the address line one, or the address part, or phone part, or something like that. These different elements are um, identifiable by the UI path. So what we're gonna do is, let's say we take the complete data. I took it, and it says that it took the native method by default. Why? Because UiPath might have thought that that this is the data that you're concerned with. You don't want the labels, but say you do, right? That's what I'm saying. So many a times people usually want to take the data that they have entered, that they've inputted in, right? But in this case, I want the labels data as well. I want to know what is first name, what is last name, what is address line 1, what is address line 2, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to change it to full text method, right? And I'm simply going to refresh it. That way the data preview or the scrape result preview would also get refreshed automatically. And here it is. So I'm getting like the system, restore, move, size, minimize, all that data along with this, right? And wow, see, I'm getting all the states which are like the drop downs um, in here. It's able to read all that data as well. So that's way too much. I don't want all that. I just want, my my state, the one that I have entered in this application. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ignore all the hidden values. These are the hidden values, right? They are behind this scroll bar. I mean behind this drop down menu, right? I don't want that. I just want the one that I've selected. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna refresh it by choosing the ignore, right? Choosing to ignore the hidden ones. Did it, and I'm now getting only the state data for New York and whatever I've put in, right? And what you can do is either you can finish it, or I mean, depends. If you wanna, play around with the native one, you can do that. If you think native would suffice for your for the data that you need in your workflow, yes. And the third one is OCR, which again we're gonna discuss in our further blog posts in greater detail, because OCR is like a beast. You gotta tame it very carefully, else it could mess up your whole workflow. So we're going to discuss different strategies to do that as well. But for OCR, we have two OCRs, Google and Microsoft, which are automatically provided by the UiPath. And you can also download Abby OCR from the package and stuff. You can always check that out. But Google OCR is mostly for smaller image, the scraping of data from smaller images with some sort of low resolution and stuff. And Microsoft OCR is pretty capable and gets like data from big files, big images with a lot of textual information. So that's usually what it is used for. And what we can do is we can change the scaling factor to make our image more readable to UiPath, or we can invert the image, which again, these capabilities I have discussed in the blog post as well. So you ought to check it out. And if I go for Google OCR and I refresh this, I want to scrape the data using OCR. Yeah, why not, right? You can see what sort of data I'm getting. My CRM sample application file, and then people, company, other. It's giving me these pipe symbols, these first this last pro RPA something something. It's because it's trying to look for WebHub, but it cannot find it because it's thinking that it's image, and getting data from an image is not gonna be reliable to most of the extent, right? So mostly OCR is used where accuracy or reliability is not the factor, but you know um, getting with the workflow and probably some sort of data, even if it is not, say, 100% correct, is needed. Yes, go for it. Or if there's like very small amount of data that is needed, right? Then of course OCR can be useful as well. We're gonna discuss those use cases later. So what we're gonna go with is the full text, right? And I'm gonna refresh it again. This is the data that I got. Now let's say I want only the address data, right? So what I'm gonna do is no, I don't want the whole thing. I'm just gonna go and select the address here. There it is, right? I just got only the address data. There's another way, right? If I just want data from a particular area of an application, so we can either select the UI element if it is identifiable by the UI path, or we can select the region, which is gonna be something like, let's say I just need only address 1 and address 2 data, right? So it's got me the city as well because probably I selected it, or it was able to identify it somehow. But there it is. And what you can always do is see. I mean, I'm gonna show you a difference as well. Uh, Yep. So the data is being correctly identified. What you can do is, once you have selected a region, say even if I don't know, by a slip of fate, you cannot somehow get the data from these first two, but you can get it from the first three fields of this application, right? Then you gotta play around with that data. You gotta use some trim functionalities to trim the last, because it's always gonna give you the city, right? And not the value, but just the label. So you can always trim the last 5 characters of this, if this text that you're gonna get, or if it is gonna be, in some cases you might get a complete data table also generated as an output. So what you can do is you can simply remove the last row and take all the other rows into consideration, and you can um, go ahead and continue with the data variables, store the relevant data in a variable, and continue with it in your workflow. So those are the things that you gotta do once you are doing the output methods, but you gotta make it as reliable and robust as possible, right? So, having said that, let's try, and I want to finish this and see what I get. So here is the corresponding activity that has been generated, and you see in full and native, most of the times we get full text activity as the output. And in here, you can see that the data that we're gonna get from the application is automatically being stored in a text variable called Windows Forms window, right? Now, I want to check what this says. So, what I can do is I can simply just print that data as an output message box and check whether the data has been or whatever was selected, the name, date, and everything, and you can see it's been generated successfully. You can play around with that data, you can do anything you want, and that's how the whole output functionality works within UiPath, right? So it's really really useful, very important, and in many cases it could literally be a savior, because otherwise if you start, you know, instead of having a wizard like this, if you start doing this manually, or like copying and pasting from the same place again and again, it could be tedious, non-productive, and like literally could be challenging as well. So this whole wizard, and with this all these capabilities, it becomes really really easy. All you gotta do is just play around with the data and play around with the different capabilities, and you can always come up with the best solution, right? Okay. Hope that made sense. And please do reach out if there are any, issues, any comments, and any problems that you might be facing. Right? Come up with your own. I would highly recommend that, everybody should come up with their own sample problems, and then start solving them. Right? You'll automatically come up with different ways. A quick example was, I had a big string of data, and I was like, a few weeks back, I was trying to get only, I mean, it was like let's say this whole application was full of data, and I had to guess just the transaction ID, and it was not an identifiable element, and somehow the region was also not working. So what I had to do was I had to take the whole application data and then trim all the part before the transaction number label, and after transaction number, I took in, let's say, transaction number space this. So what I can do is, um, I can take from transaction number, if I know that always the data is going to be of at least of 10 characters. I'm going to take 15 characters after transaction number, and I'm going to take out all the data from the part that is after the transaction number, right? And that way I have a very little chunk of data to play around with, and I can always modify it by delimiting it with the spaces, and getting only the number that I want, and probably use it in my workflow. So, I mean, you gotta play around with the data, you gotta learn how these things work. It could be a little challenging, it might seem a little intimidating at first, but trust me, once you get a hold of it, it becomes a piece of cake. All right. Thank you very much. This is it for this week, and stay posted on Pro RPA. Thank you very much. Bye bye.